In retrospect, the 1987 NBA draft has proven to be one of the best of all time, given that it led to the discovery of multiple Hall of Famers, including Scottie Pippen and Reggie Miller, along with numerous star players such as Kevin Johnson, Mark Jackson, and Muggsy Bogues.
11 points per 6 minutes, 59-52 at the buzzer. It's good!
More than anything, though, the draft is best remembered for the number one pick, future Hall of Famer David Robinson. After being selected by the Spurs, Robinson would spend his entire career in San Antonio from between 1989 and 2003, during which he helped lead the team to rings in 1999 and 2003, before handing over the reins of the franchise to his protege, fellow future Hall of Famer Tim Duncan, who helped the team secure 3 more rings in 2005, 2007, and 2014.
Yeah! 7 years, man.
We're back.
It's been a while, team.
Despite the fact that Duncan was primarily responsible for the Spurs' first 3 championships, and the fact that there's been numerous other great players to represent San Antonio, Robinson is regarded by many basketball fans as the epitome of the team, given that, although his talents were never in question, he was always willing to put his ego and personal success aside for the ultimate good of the franchise. Seeing as how Robinson embodied the perfect player to build around in San Antonio, it's hard to imagine him representing another team. But, leading up to the 1987 draft, there was a strong likelihood that he could end up somewhere else. Between the 31st of May and the 1st of June 2013, Julian's Auction sold off a large collection from Elgin Baylor's Hall of Fame career, which spanned from 1958 to 1972, after he was selected by the Minneapolis Lakers with the first pick of the 1958 draft. Predictably, the auction was made up predominantly of memorabilia from his time in the NBA as a player, such as his 1959 All-Star MVP trophy, along with his rings from the Lakers' 1972 championship, and the one he received after he was named amongst the 50 greatest players of all time in 1996. The auction also included a strange but historically significant item from his time as an NBA executive, a Clippers jersey from the 80s with Robinson's name on it. Shortly after the conclusion of his playing career, Elgin opted to return to the NBA as an official when he was hired as an assistant coach for the New Orleans Jazz in 1974, serving in the role until the end of the 78-79 season. After another break away from the game, Elgin returned to the NBA in April 1986 when he was hired by the Clippers as a high-ranking official. Ultimately, his crowning achievement in the role would come at the end of the 05-06 season, when he was named the 2006 Executive of the Year. This came after the Clippers had made the playoffs for the first time since 1997, finishing as a 6th seed, one spot ahead of their crosstown rivals, the Lakers. Conversely, the 1987 draft is one of the lowest moments, if not the lowest, of Elgin's time as a Clippers official. Back in 1985, for that year's draft, the NBA introduced a lottery system in order to determine who got the number 1 pick, whereby the worst teams from the previous season had the best chance of getting the selection. Prior to the 1985 draft, from 1966 to 1984, the top pick had been determined simply by flipping a coin to decide between the worst teams from either conference for the previous season as to who would get the upcoming number 1 selection. But, following complaints that teams would just blatantly tank in order to be the worst team in their respective conference, the league decided that pulling envelopes containing the names of non-playoff teams from a hopper was a better idea. Except, one major flaw was that each team involved had an equal chance of getting the number 1 pick, meaning that the worst team from the previous season weren't guaranteed a top 5 selection, even though the whole point of the draft is to help the worst teams in the league get better with new talent. So, ultimately, for the 1987 draft, the league decided that they needed to modify the lottery system so that the worst team from the previous season could receive no lower than the 4th pick. And, headed into the 1987 draft lottery, the Clippers were the absolute worst team from the 86-87 season by far, with just 12 wins and 70 losses to their name. The Knicks and the New Jersey Nets were tied as the second worst teams with 24 wins and 58 losses each, though the Nets' percentage was slightly worse than the Knicks, while the Spurs were the third worst with 28 and 54. Despite the fact that the Clippers weren't guaranteed a top 2 pick due to the recent changes, they were still so confident that they would get the top pick and use it to select Robinson that they produced a jersey with his name on it for the occasion, which well and truly seemed to jinx the team. Because, ultimately, the Clippers ended up with not the 1st pick, but the 4th. They even lost out to the Suns, who were the 7th worst team for the 86-87 season, yet ended up with the 2nd pick, which they used on Armin Gilliam. With the 4th pick, the Clippers used it to select Georgetown standout Reggie Williams. Ultimately, he'd put up respectable numbers for the team for his rookie campaign before suffering a season-ending injury in March 1988. Despite returning for the 88-89 season, Williams still struggled with injuries and clashed with Clipper officials before the team gave up on him early into his 3rd season. All up, Williams would play just 98 games with the Clippers before being traded to the Cavs in November 1989. Williams then became a journeyman, playing for numerous teams over his 10-year career before retiring in 1997 after his team at the time, the Nets, renounced their rights to him. At a glance, it would appear that it was Elgin who jinxed the Clippers by producing a jersey for Robinson before they knew for sure that they'd had the chance to select him. But in reality, the vast majority of Elgin's time as a Clippers official was far from successful, or pleasant, due almost entirely to the person he worked for, the team's owner, Donald Sterling. Over the course of his 33-year ownership of the team, from between 1981 and 2014, the Clippers lost 50 or more games per year for all but 2 seasons. On paper, most of the Clippers' struggles during the Sterling era appear to be Elgin's fault, given that he was a top official for the team. But in reality, most of the team's failures during that time were directly because of the owner himself, who was notorious for micromanaging the franchise, despite knowing little about the game of basketball, let alone about how to manage an organization at the highest level. So, most likely, the jersey was Sterling's idea. Presumably, he didn't realize that the rules of the draft had changed and believed that, because the Clippers had the most losses of the 86-87 season, he felt certain that the team landing the number 1 pick was all but guaranteed, even though now they weren't even assured of a top 2 pick. Ultimately, if there's some consolation for long-suffering Clippers fans out there over losing out on Robinson back in 1987, it's that, even if the team won that year's lottery and selected Robinson with the number 1 pick in the draft, he still might have ended up with a different franchise. Robinson nominated to join the NBA after attending the United States Naval Academy, representing the midshipmen from between 1983 and 1987. But there were complications. Due to his military commitments, he wouldn't be able to join the league until the 89-90 season, as he was required to perform 2 years of active duty in the Navy, even though, standing at 7'1", he far exceeded the Navy's height restrictions for midshipmen at the time of 6'6", making it even more obvious that his future would be in basketball, not military service.
Number 50. The end of an era. 50 points for number 50. 12 rebounds, 2 block shots, 3 steals.
Because of his unusual circumstances, there was a chance that Robinson could have chosen to re-nominate for the 1989 draft and been selected by another team, which is an opportunity that most players would have jumped at in order to get out of having to play for Sterling.
With that first pick in the 1989 NBA draft, the Sacramento Kings select...
In the end, despite the historical significance of Robinson's jersey, it sold for just $640 at Elgin's auction, presumably because there was so little promotion of the sale itself, let alone the fact that it included the rare piece of NBA memorabilia. And, as a result, whoever purchased the jersey got it for a steal, due simply to the fact that they had practically no competition when bidding for it, meaning that they obtained one of the rarest pieces of NBA memorabilia for what was just as big of a steal as Robinson was for the Spurs.
David Robinson, 5-0, the greatest Spur of them all. Points for number 50.